Well, if Britain is a nation of shopkeepers, then no more so than here in Luton, where industry used to dominate, from straw hat making to Vauxhall cars. Now the town has to rely on selling things to get by. And we're not just talking about big supermarkets like this one. The vast majority of businesses here are small scale and entrepreneurial. Well, I've been talking to Luton's shopkeepers and their customers about their struggle through years of economic gloom and their fear that things are about to get worse.
There's bargains aplenty at Luton Market, but shoppers aren't in much of a hurry to part with their cash. Job losses, like the 100 or so announced before Christmas at this Vauxhall van plant, have had a chilling effect. So the prospect of another descent into recession fills people here with dread.
I think things are going to get a whole lot tougher. I don't think we're just not going to come out of recession because we keep dipping in and dipping out. So somewhere along the line we have to find a solution. I think, yeah, fair enough for the government, but the government are not in the real world. We're out here in the real world. We have to work and earn our living where they don't really have that.
I vote Labour, to be honest, because the Tories, they don't know what it is to not have. And they've been in government, I think it's about, 2-3 years now? And all they do is blame the last government. They keep blaming. If I started a job and I didn't do the job well, I would have been sacked and out of that job ages ago.
At the end of the day, you should just work harder. The thing is, it's positive mental attitude. That's what we need, a little bit more positive. Because at the end of the day, it's struggling for everyone, isn't it? But at the same time, if we all British upper lip and all that.
For centuries, Luton residents have had to think on their feet to respond to the economy's ups and downs. More than 300 years ago, villagers who made a living plaiting straw hats took umbrage at a bill which obliged people to wear woolen hats. Local milliners did eventually embrace change, but now there's only one big hat maker left. One pensioner I came across in the market used to model hats in her youth. Now at 84, she's struggling to make ends meet.
I'm a widowed, I'm left on my own, so it is hard. I worked for 30 odd years in the hat trade and 8 years in finance at Vauxhall, so I get a little pension for that. Nothing for the hat trade, but I get my husband's old age and mine. You do find each week things gone up. Different items have gone up, you know, you go into the shop and it might only be penny or tuppence, but it's gone up.
They're destroying the poor in order to justify that, to make the economy better, but there's the rich people who made it bad in the first place. The bankers, all these corrupt politicians, they made it bad, they're still getting rich. The poor people are getting destroyed by it. That's what I don't like.
Although they don't make many hats or cars here now, there's no shortage of entrepreneurial spirit. 4/5 of companies in the area employ fewer than 10 people. But before the economy starts to grow again, small businesses like these might need a bit more of a helping hand from the government and banks that are prepared to lend.
Well, I'm joined now by some Luton residents. Barry Rose owns a food store in the market I was at earlier. John Archer works with people trying to find jobs, though his organisation has incidentally just had its funding cut. And Terry Manning is a student and also a homelessness campaigner. Well, Barry, let's come to you first. I mean, people are talking today about this being worse than the Great Depression. As a store owner yourself, how does it feel to you?
Things are tight. Very, very tight. Over the Christmas period, compared with last year, I would say sales are down. Before Christmas, in the run-up, I got all my stock in, waited anxiously for the customers to come. But realistically, I'd say I only had 4 really good days sales, and that was the Thursday, the Friday, the Saturday, and then the Monday before Christmas. So
and that's not really enough to really keep you going. I mean, has it picked up now?
No, I mean, traditionally Januaries are slow, but this January is the slowest I've ever seen.
Right.
And I've been in business now this is my 2nd year of business. Last year January was a bit better, but it was slow. But this year it's dire.
Well, Terry, you're the future. You're 2nd year as a student. When you graduate, how worried are you that the jobs aren't going to be there for you?
I feel like as a graduate I will have a better opportunity to get a job. I feel like through my volunteering I do, as well as my job, as well as my studying, I feel that will be enough to support me. But I feel kind of worried for other people who haven't got that that graduation behind them, haven't got the skills and have just come out with GCSEs or A-levels, I feel a bit more worried for them than I do for myself.
But it's interesting that you yourself are quite optimistic. Why is that, do you think?
I just feel it's because I've got so much experience behind me. I feel experience works more in this world than like having a graduate degree or having any sort of education. I feel like if you've got experience doing things, like if you've got experience leading your own things, you've got experience helping other people, I just feel that you should be more optimistic, because at the end of the day, if you've got the skills, people are going to want to use you and optimise them.
Well, John, you're nodding at that.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a curious factor of this recession. It's a grim recession that, you know, heading back, potentially triple dip recession we're talking about now. Yet the jobs market is pretty buoyant. Is that you place people in work? Is that what you're finding?
Yeah, when we take people out from homelessness and we try and drive them through to a job, that's what we're trying to do. But I think the mix of jobs in Luton is something we've got to look at. So that like, you know, if you're well qualified, no problem. But if you're looking for a reasonable, you know, an entry level job, very, very difficult to get hold of, and that's where the real trouble lies, I think.
But traditionally, people have been talking about how you can get a job that's sort of like a pretty poor job, but it's the better jobs that are hard to come by. But you're saying the opposite.
No, I think there's a lack of entry-level jobs, and I think some of that then means that if you're caught in a trap, if you're on housing benefits, you're caught in a trap that the wages you can gain don't really make any sense, and there's no real incentive then to move into the job market. But the jobs themselves are pretty poor paid.
Well, Terry, are you worried that when you do finally get a job, that it's going to be a pretty poorly paid job?
No, I don't worry about that. I've been through a lot of poorly paid jobs and I've gained a lot of experience through being in poorly paid jobs, and I feel like if they take the whole package I've got as a whole, like all my volunteering, all my previously paid jobs, I feel like if they put me in a low paid job and they put me in a menial job, then they're wasting somebody who's got skill, and I wouldn't want to stay in an organisation like that, even if it was the only job I could find.
Well, Barry, you've shown that entrepreneurial spirit we were talking about in the piece that we just saw there. What do you want the government to do? Are you, Labour, for example, Lib Dems are both talking about spending more on things like housing to boost the economy. Do you want the government to change course now?
Definitely. I think we all understand the reasons behind the cuts, but I think the cuts were too deep, too wide. What the economy needs is some kind of stimulus. As far as the businesses are concerned, I still find it hard to get credit.
Right, so you want the banks to lend more?
Exactly. You know, if we could at least get access to, you know, certain types of loans, then it would help, you know. But there seems to be no help around. Government is talking a lot but not doing much.
But the government, what they are talking about is needing to cut the deficit. That's what they came into government to do. Terry, they say that it's because they don't want future generations burdened with debt. Does that make sense to you?
Sorry, repeat the question.
The government has been talking about cutting the deficit so that future generations, people like yourself, aren't burdened with a whole load of debt. Does that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't make sense. I mean, I know I'm coming out with uni with a heap of debt, but I don't want the whole economy to have to suffer in a heap of debt. And I mean, it seems pointless to me to put the actual amount it costs to go to uni up as well for the current people going to uni, because you're losing out on all those skilled people who are going to help you in the future when you come to that stage where you're like, we need skilled people to build our economy, and I think we're reaching that stage, and it just seems like a pointless time to make people's debts more and put people's debts up, so the country takes it as a whole.
John?
Yeah, I think we've got to get out of this hole. I think we're in a big hole, we've got to get out of it.
So stay the course on the cuts?
Stay the course in that respect, but what I want is more sympathy for the people who are unable to cope with these cuts, the people who are, you know, the more vulnerable people in our society. I think we're forgetting them.
So the
They're
benefits
like
cuts,
major casualties there. So the benefit cuts need to be looked at, and you've got to look at the whole population. It seems to be a bit of a fat cat type thing again, but some of the poor people in our society just aren't getting a fair crack at this.
Barry, you want to re-look at the benefits cuts? Or you're not sure? You think the benefits, you support the benefits cuts?
Yes, I understand why there needs to be benefit cuts, but I think there needs to be also a little bit more compassion. There needs to be some more compassion. And realistically, we're not going to get out of this hole in the short term. So we need to have a broader view of the problem. It seems as if the government wants us to deal with this in a very short period of time. And I personally think that this is a long-term thing, and therefore it needs a more long-term approach. Yeah.
Barry Rose, John Archer, Terry Manning, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Krish, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Cathy.